Hey, welcome to my channel. My name is Dr. Sharice. I help Black men and women heal from trauma and toxic relationships, like we'll be talking about today. So I'm going to start with Quad and Greg's history, some of it, some of the dialogue that we've seen on the show. And then I'm going to go to Sweet Tea and Gregory's conversations and tips for Sweet Tea on how to add more peace to life, right? Toxic relationships, they center around chaos, trying to displace whatever internal chaos you have with the person that you're with. You're in a toxic dance. It's a cycle pattern that people create. Two toxic people are required to be in a toxic relationship. One of the things about reality TV is that the more we see the woman, the less you all see her as a victim, right? You see her as an active participant in it versus just the perpetrator and victim, because that's even in a physically abusive relationship, the idea of perpetrator victim is not helpful to the person that is victimized and needs to also do their healing. Because as you probably have seen in your own life, there are women like maybe Portia, maybe Jennifer Williams, who, if you look at their history, you will see they consistently pick terrible men to partner with. And so at that point, I think it's easier for you to see, wait a second, there must be something she's doing that's adding to this kind of drama and chaos and confusion. So let's start with Quad and Greg. I had originally went back to watch Married to Medicine, some of the seasons and then all of the reunions, because I wanted to review the current season after the current season started. Because I didn't watch any of last season. I just watched the reunion. I was disturbed. I think I was disturbed. Like I'm a fan of Dr. Heavenly, I don't think from watching the show, because I think if I only watched the show and I never watched her YouTube, I would be like, this lady is like, she's disgusting, like vile, right? Like on the show, I think she is okay playing the villain, and the things that she does are actually, I think they're beyond mean. I think they're vindictive. No, I think Dr. Simone is vindictive, but Dr. Heavenly has done like some really awful things. And I think having the idea to bring Quad's abusive ex back on the show is one of those very like dark things that when you pause and you think about it, and we will have the conversation about how awful Greg is, why was this an idea? And I did see Dr. Heavenly on her, because I watch all her, I like her on her YouTube channel. And I know she says some outlandish things. I'm thinking of other videos to do on misogyny and homophobia. But she did apologize to Quad for being the person to bring her abusive ex back, right? But the thought, just even having the thought, I think is wild that these women conspire, because it wasn't just Dr. Heavenly, right? This is also a conversation with Dr. Simone, Dr. Jackie, and also, I don't know how much Toya had to do with it, but also the network in saying, we don't really care if he was hitting her or not hitting her, because they also have an issue with that word. They don't want to talk about the abuse part of it, but then we see him on the show being abusive to Sweet Tea. So we'll get into it, right? Because all of the data is there. None of it is hidden. They still have those episodes up. So if we are not dealing with facts, right? If you want to leave a comment about how much you dislike Quad, probably because she's very confident and very dark skinned, that's a you problem. But I think the facts are very clear about how awful Dr. G is. So some of the background of Dr. G and Quad, they were in a sexless marriage, right? And a sexless marriage doesn't necessarily have zero sex, but it's like months can go by without sex. But in their case, at some early point in the marriage, I think the sex frequently reduced significantly. And then they were not having sex for like 3 years up to their divorce. There was an incident is probably not the right word, but I think at the season 3, after one of the reunions, they were talking about was their last time having sex. But soon after that, Dr. G was having a hard time getting an erection. And he was saying that's because he was so stressed out from work and something else was going on. Sidebar, Dr. G probably has low testosterone. There's probably something hormonal also happening with Dr. G. I'm not a medical doctor, I'm a psychologist, so I won't get into that, but I wouldn't be surprised if he even now has difficulty getting an erection, maintaining an erection and completing. Sex is very important to marriage. This is why I'm bringing it up. Sex is very important to marriage. And if you're not able to perform, it's going to cause additional problems. And then same for the woman. If she's not participating, it's going to cause problems in the marriage. I view it more as a symptom than a cause, but I think they're related. They kind of go both ways. So what's the other point here? They had really poor communication, Dr. G and Quad, and she would hang up and block his phone number to avoid having an argument with him. I think he definitely has a way with words in being condescending and disrespectful, and I can understand a toxic response to that, right? Like hanging up on somebody is not healthy. Blocking your husband's phone number is not healthy. But we also saw a scene where Dr. Greg, when they were having couples therapy, like pretend to have a seizure. It was, listen, something is wrong. We all fall short. We all have areas of growth. Some of us have done more work than others. He needs help, right? I'm not here to villainize or demonize him. I think everyone involved has a lot of healing to do. And I am definitely concerned. Concerned is too strong a word, but something wrong with him and he needs help, okay? So in the scene where, at the reunion scene where Andy is having a conversation with Quad, Dr. G, and they're talking about like the ending of their marriage, right? Because they hadn't really seen each other since some argument that they had. She described Greg tearing a TV off the wall. I do think it's important to understand because people are having conversations now about ASPT in a physically abusive relationship. And I would say probably, right? There are different kinds of violence, different levels of violence, and there is some violence that people can do to the environment. So they're not attacking you specifically. But if you tear a TV off a wall, if you throw a cup against the wall, if you punch the wall, like if you do any of these like environmental things, that is still physical acts of aggression and they're violent, right? They can have a similar reactionary response of fear in the person who's in the room with you because they have no idea if you're going to throw that cup in their direction or bottle or whatever it is. And so people can maybe preemptively or in response trying to protect themselves do certain things like Quad ended up pulling a knife on him. So he tore the TV off the wall. He took the battery out of her car. Taking the battery out of your wife's car falls under domestic violence. That's what that is. That is an act of violence. You are stopping her from leaving. It's a manipulation control tactic. It's very aggressive, very violent. It's not hitting someone, but it's very violent and aggressive and disrespectful behavior. She said that he ruined her knee and he put his hand over her mouth and nose. I wondered if someone coached her into describing the observation of it. Like, it's not an interpretation. She didn't say he tried to suffocate me. I've been actively trained to do observations, not an interpretation. Just because he put his hand over her mouth and nose doesn't mean he's trying to suffocate her. That's very likely the intent. But often when you say that, the other person has this response, well, I wasn't trying to do that. I was just trying to get you to stop. I was just, right, a defense. But when you just describe what actually happened, it's hard to argue against. In this same conversation, she had said he was dancing with a woman, right? And his response to that was, I was not dancing with a woman. She was dancing with me. Bro, what's the difference? What's the difference? But this is a person who plays mind games. This is a person who manipulates, who uses words, turns them, gaslights. Like, this is an actual person that probably engages in the literal definition. Y'all don't really be having nobody gaslighting you. But the literal definition of gaslighting, trying to skew your reality to control the situation and convince you that what happened is not what actually happened, right? To avoid the consequences. So he also, right, because after they came back from this conversation, I think Dr. Heavenly was talking about, you shouldn't be with any abusive man. In the back, Dr. Contessa was saying, there's no coming back from a man who's hit you. And then when they were on the stage, Mariah, for some reason, was going out of her way to protect Dr. G. I think this is the misogyny that's there. They just view men as needing protection. Like, we have to uplift the black man or some craziness like that. And got distracted with the word hit. If it was me, I'm telling you, I'm not interrupting no woman to say, well, he didn't say hit. I'm not doing that. Not when the next thing that Quad said is we were in the car and he was speeding, right? He was driving. He put his foot on the gas and he said he didn't care what happened to me or him. But I'm going to argue about he didn't say the word hit. This man was engaging in activities that could have led to my death. This is a physically abusive relationship. Yes, that's what it is. Getting caught up on the word hit, I think, is disastrous, but really a sign that a lot of the women, well, the two of them, I think it was like, was it Toya? I just watched this and I forget. It was mostly Mariah, not wanting to use the word hit when hit was fine. Hit is fine to use. Hit is like an understatement for the kind of intent that this man had for Quad. Greg said, there were times it got too physical and he never felt good about it. Okay, I don't know. You don't need to feel good about it. Does that make it better that you felt bad after? You kept doing it. Like this was not just a one-time thing in their relationship. And then he says that she's always been violent. I mean, I have no idea, right? If she's always been violent. He, I think, has this perception of her. Maybe he and Mariah, people who've known Quad a long time since she's from Memphis, have viewed her as like a hood rat, right? That's like ghetto girl, always ready to fight. I don't know that Quad is like that. When she was introduced to the show, I thought she was like gregarious, really big personality. I didn't really get ghetto from her. Maybe I got more like country, more like naive is not the right word, but like now she's in a big city, right? Like small town girl in a big city, but she has a big personality and this suits her better. Like she belongs in the big city. I didn't really get like hood rat. It's such a demeaning term, right? It's such a demeaning term because it also adds a level of worth or lack of worth to the person. Like because you're so violent, you don't deserve me being kind to you or some craziness like that. So him saying she's always been violent, right? A deflection from him taking responsibility for his own violent action. If he addressed like speeding or suffocating her, they didn't show it. But in what we saw, there was no accountability, 10% accountability for what was going on, then ending it with, and she's always been so violent anyway. I am more inclined to believe that the kind of verbal aggression that he demonstrated to her on a consistent basis was met with physical aggression on her end, whether it's like slamming a door, slamming the, what do you call it? Slamming the cupboard, like doing things around in the space, which then amp him up because he is so emotionally dysregulated. That would lead to him also doing things, maybe pushing her out the way. I don't know. These people talked all about dragging her by her hair downstairs, and he had his whole body weight on her. Like when you really envision it, and I do encourage people to envision it like you're watching a movie. When you put a visual image to the words that are being described, they just sound so absolutely awful. The fact that this man was brought back onto the show, I think is in line with how Bravo doesn't even really care about alcoholics, right? Like helping people be clean. They don't really even care about like sexual assault because they let so many things slide for so long that I don't really think they care. We're going to make good TV. We're going to make money. The advertisers are, going to want to chime in because we're not going to talk about the abuse. We're not going to make this whole conversation pieces about how violent this man has been. So yeah, why would they not have him on? These are white men controlling these things. Why would they not have him on? So that is Greg and Quad. Now you may be wondering, because a lot of people were asking, why would Quad hug him after all of this happened in last season? At the end, she hugged him. I think it's complicated, right? You may not understand all of what PTSD entails, especially she didn't have like Stockholm syndrome, right? But in toxic abusive relationships, there's often this piece of bargaining. So at the end of the season 6 reunion meeting with him and with Dr. G and Andy, she was really holding back from saying, and I still love him, right? Because she feels what she thinks is love. It wasn't love, right? But when you're in the thick of toxic abusive relationships, you feel like the connection that you all have is love and that it's still there so strong because so much emotion has been attached to it. But my favorite definition for love is in the Bible. Love is patient, love is kind. None of that, well, not, I can't say none of that happened in their relationship. But most of their relationship was not about love. It was about anger and pain and suffering. And so it wasn't love. It was a lot of strong emotional connection, but I wouldn't call it love. But the perception of that being love is what keeps women in the relationship. They're like, okay, well, he's apologetic. He is complimenting me. He seems to have, some sadness about what he did. He probably won't do it again. He didn't really mean it. And so I can forgive him. I can let it go. We can try again. And after that long period of time, I think when Quad had not seen Dr. G for years at that point, right? I can understand why I'm trying to move past this. I'm not really sure. I don't know. I don't know. Did Quad feel healed before this season? I don't think so. But I think she was trying to show to herself that she could move on from this, that, what happened in the past was the past and this is a clean slate. Maybe. But as we saw in season 11, she was triggered in a lot of different ways. I think before she was trying to save her job, and now job is secured a bit. I have a man also, because these women treated Quad awful when she was single. And now she has backup and she is free to be and to express what is really happening. And she had been holding it in for so long. So that is Dr. G. I hope you get a picture of what kind of husband he was to Quad. So let's jump to the scene after Greg was bucking up to King, after King rushed Greg and Greg was back home with his wife, right? They left because it was about to be a physically dangerous environment, and they're having a scene where they're talking about like what happened, and Greg cannot stop being himself, right? So he's saying, I'm glad the guys were there because it would have been a fight to the death. He didn't say could have. It would have been a fight to the death. Sweet Tea is saying, I don't think so. I was there. And he's like, you don't even know him. What were you gonna do? And she's like, I'm combat trained. He said, combat my ass. Why? We're not like in a heated conversation. I strongly encourage not cursing or even using curse words in conversations with your partner, let alone what might turn into an argument, because there is a time and a place for curse words. They carry their own energy. And when you bring them into a conversation when they're not needed, or do you understand that the response you're going to get now that you've added a curse word to it is going to be up, right? When you combat my ass, why would you talk to your wife like that? We're just having a conversation about what happened. If you're still like frustrated about what happened, don't take it out on your wife. You process that information. So he says, combat my ass, you still a woman. And in one of my previous videos, I said, he said, you're still a woman. It was as if he was saying, because then he also adds in naive. It felt to me like he was saying, you're a stupid ass. That's what, like, the energy of what he said, because altogether it was, and you're still a woman, gives a side eye and then sips on his water or whatever while still making eye contact. It was so condescending. It was so disrespectful. Calling her naive just felt like he was saying, you so stupid. You don't really know nothing. I don't know why you're saying anything because you're wrong. That was the energy of it, because words do matter, but tone also matters. And his tone was so condescending. It was like, why are you being so mean? So in response to that, because that's a level of verbal aggression, right? Sweet Tea has been here before. They've done this dance before. She defends herself, right? She tries to stand up for herself. And then his response to her standing up for herself, like, yeah, I was trained. I was, in the military. He says, you can be so naive. In response to that, Sweet Tea defends herself again, right? So they're not really having a conversation about the topic anymore. They're having a conversation about how wrong Sweet Tea is. So he's telling her she's wrong. She's just defending herself. I'm not wrong. I'm just saying my opinion. I'm telling you my experience. My opinion matters. And Dr. G is not really good with accountability. I think even the men have seen Dr. G is absolutely terrible at taking accountability for his role in things. Where I'm not saying that King rushing him is his fault. King is responsible for his own behaviors, and he should not be physically aggressive to another man who you're not in danger. There's nothing here for you to defend. Honor, you can do that with your words. You do not have to rush a person as if you're going to hit them. You're not responsible for King doing that, but you have to take accountability for how you said shut the F up to somebody's woman, how you doubled down on it the next day to make sure the man heard you disrespect his woman. And then there was a consequence, right? Well, is it a consequence? There was a response. King had a response to it. So in the conversation with Dr. G and Sweet Tea, he ends the conversation by getting up and leaving, right? He's not interested in being accountable. He has nothing else to say about what her opinion is. He just wants to move on from it. So we've seen him do this with Quad too. When he's frustrated, he just like leaves the house. He just gets up and goes. That is not a healthy way to end a conversation. Stonewalling is avoiding the actual conversation that needs to happen in your relationship. You can say, hey, can we take a pause? I want to talk about this later. Can we talk about it tomorrow? I'm getting really frustrated. I need to calm down. Just give me some space. Give me 20 minutes, something like that. That is what needs to happen when you're communicating with your partner about frustration that you're experiencing. Just getting up while the conversation is still going on is highly disrespectful. It erodes the foundation of your relationship. So behind closed door, because if I was counseling Sweet Tea, I would say, do not follow him. Don't follow him. That's part of the dance that he wants, right? I do this, you do that. I get up and leave, you come follow me. You ask me what's going on, I blame it on you, right? Which is what happened. But I do think that production told her to go and talk to him. Go and see what he's doing. So she goes upstairs to talk to him, goes behind the closed doors, doesn't realize that they have very powerful mics. And G is saying, it's your fault. What is her fault? He says, don't say ish to me to make me go off, right? There are levels of toxicity and, for me, concern about physical abuse in this statement. It is, you are responsible for my feelings. Be careful what you say because you are going to make me mad. No. Dr. G is responsible for his own feelings. If there is something he's triggered by, he has to go and deal with that. Sweet Tea doesn't have to take any ownership for him having a feeling. Feelings are your responsibility. I know in this day and age in reality TV, people are very reactive to their environment and want to blame other people, but it's never another person's fault if you lose it, if you spiral. That is you. It's you. So in response to that, Sweet Tea is defending herself again. I'm entitled to my opinion. Who said she wasn't entitled to her opinion? Nobody said it, but in other ways, Dr. G has said it. Your opinion is wrong. Your opinion doesn't really matter because you're a woman. So he says, you think you know everything. Has she acted like she knows everything? No, it's just a tactic to deflect from his own level of responsibility. Not just for the incident now, because what's happening now has nothing really to do with the incident. They've had this argument over and over and over again about lots of different topics. This argument is really about, are you able to take care of your own emotions? Are you able to calm down after a period of frustration? In his case, no. He has to blame the other person that's available to him because he doesn't want to take ownership or responsibility for calming his own self down. In a similar vein, right? Sweet Tea, this book, Women Who Love Too Much, right? Part of the goal here for women who love too much is to try to fix. You have the belief that you can fix his emotions, that you are, right? Because in the what is it? In the confessional scene, she says, I'm all you have. Girl, what? Why do you want to be what all a man has? That man needs to go talk to somebody. He needs a mentor. He needs his own therapist. It is not your responsibility. But when you view it as your responsibility, then you have responses like Sweet Tea does. Don't call me naive. He says, I don't know who you think you're talking to. Stop saying stupid stuff and you won't get the reaction you don't want. It's your fault. Sweet Tea goes on to defend herself. This is the back and forth thing that they have as a regular part of their relationship. The first thing to do when engaging in these kind of toxic relationships is stop trying to fix the man. Focus on yourself. Now, in Sweet Tea's case, I definitely think if she does focus on herself, this relationship 100% is going to end like within 2 years. Like there's no way these folks would make it to like a 10-year relationship with this toxicity going on and Sweet Tea working on herself. Like if Sweet Tea, because what we've also seen is Sweet Tea is extremely reactive, which leads me more to think that they engage in like physical back and forth with each other. We saw when Sweet Tea was getting married and her sister Her sister was triggering her. From what I saw, it felt like on purpose. Like her sister is her twin and knows her very well and knows what would set her off and did it. Still not, your sister is not responsible for the emotional reaction, but everybody does need to take responsibility for their role. And whatever her sister said when she was at the bachelorette party, I forget what it was, definitely set Sweet Tea off. She definitely went from like 0 to 100 like real quick. And it was definitely out of proportion to whatever it was happening. And she had a hard time calming down. Like 3 people had to put her in the bathroom and like talk to her and calm her down. I think it's a similar thing that we saw on the beach because like they cut those scenes up so much, like when they were by the pool having that conversation about like what couples do or what they like and how much time they'll have sex. They cut that scene up in ways that I think were confusing to a lot of us because we didn't get to hear them say, hear Dr. G say, shut the F up to Quad directly. Like we saw him looking at her, we saw King looking at him, but they eliminated part of that so that it would be confusing to us, right? Because it makes for good conversation so that we can make videos like this. But in a similar way, when the next day came and they were on the beach and Sweet Tea was running to go protect her man, running to try to get at King or at Quad or find out what was happening, I think they left something out there because at what point does Phaedra need to be like, what would inspire her to speak in tongues? To me, somebody absolutely losing it, like crying, somebody hysterical, but for what reason? I don't know what else could have happened. She was just in so much fear at the idea because by that point, the first person that laid their hand on King stopped. Like he stopped aggressing from what we could see. So I'm just very curious about her own level of emotional reactivity. But if Sweet Tea, I doubt you would watch this video, but girl, if you focus on calming your own reaction, not taking things personal, responding to people with calm words, putting up boundaries that are healthy for you, you won't want this man. Because you will see that this is a man that is so out of touch with his own emotions, so out of touch. Oh my gosh. And to be almost 60 and be doing this, like age is not connected to wisdom. It's not connected to emotional regulation either. Lots of people in their 70s and 80s are just in drama and chaos still. It's really about putting the hard work in and the intent to heal and be better, right? To respond to your environment in a better way, to develop a sort of internal peace that nothing can sway you. Not nothing, but you know what I mean? Nothing. That you can get to a point where you can observe people for what they are and you don't have to take any of that on. So whatever is leading you to act so aggressively in response, it feels like a trauma response. Like it feels like something happened. I don't know. Because I saw her dad. Her dad looks young like Dr. G. Right? To be her dad is like the same age as Dr. G. I don't know, something happened, right? I've worked with enough families to know that a 2-parent household or a woman who has access to her father, that he loves her and cares for her and can walk her down the aisle, doesn't really mean anything because you have to know what was the environment like for the child growing up, like who took advantage of you or who, I don't know, who left you on your own that you feel now that you need like a fatherly guidance, because that is how Dr. G acts. I mean, that's, I think, part of the goal with women who are partnered with men who are almost 30 years older than them. You're looking for a daddy. You want somebody to help you with life, right? You want some of that structure that they're able to provide. Her doing that and then still like making fun of elderly women when your man is like 5 years away from elderly status is wild. I think it speaks to like the cognitive dissonance between I am attracted to this man because he reminds me of my father, to this is a youthful man who he and I can have like this wonderful marriage together. Like that's not, they don't really go. I don't part of the reason why he has no kids and is so old and single is because he has all these issues. But also, girl, you got a lot of issues still. And so I do encourage you to read the book. Let me see if there's anything, because in my Yandy video, I read some of the titles. But in the road to recovery part, it has 10 steps, and I have other videos about the steps, like um, what it takes to heal. Some of them here on go for help, right? That's step, I mean, I think that's step one. Like you, so similar to like a drug addiction, this is a love addiction, and you need support. Like you need support, you need help. If you've been in it for years, which she has, you need, it's hard. If you've tried to leave and came back, tried to leave again, came back, tried to leave, you need help. Okay. You need help. So going for help, seeing someone, I think is one of the first best things you can do for yourself. To do that, you have to get out of denial though, right? You have to acknowledge that I don't really know what I'm doing. I am acting like a child. I'm having temper tantrums like an actual child. And I don't like that. Like you have to say that first. Like, and I like to say awareness is the hardest step. To even get to the rest of these steps, you have to acknowledge that, girl, you are not okay. You're not okay. So going for help is really the first step. And then make your own recovery the first priority in your life. Find a support group. Finding a support group was the last step that I did that really made was a game changer for me in healing and being able to maintain it. Another one is develop your spiritual side through daily practice. All of these things are supposed to help you find the internal peace so that you're not looking to another person to express, it's not express, to offload your feelings to, right? Part of what these tense arguments, they serve like a purpose in helping the person get it out, but it doesn't really get it out. It is like just a small piece of the pain that's actually inside of them, but it's enough for them to feel okay after, especially if they engage in like sexual intimacy. But it's not a long-term solution to actual healing. Like you actually have to get it out, and the it is the original pain that caused you to even be in a toxic relationship like this. Like this belief that you're not worth someone treating you well is part of what you need to get at. Another like step in healing, stop managing and controlling others. That's what she does with Greg. That's why she views him as, well, views herself as all he has. Does he not have other things? And then learn not to get hooked into games. And the games is like what Dr. G did at the table when he was calling her naive and then got up and left. Oh my goodness. So we'll see what happens. This relationship, I do think she's going to stay in it to save face, but I think she's going to be miserable for most of it. I do think they will reach a point, especially because he's only going to get older. His thing is only going to stop working more, that she will eventually leave. And hopefully she doesn't repeat this relationship, because women often do this. Either they keep going back to the same man, or they just find a relationship one after the other that's very similar to create the kind of chaos that they're looking for that reflects their inner world. So let me know what you think in the comments. I am praying for everyone's healing. I honestly am. I'm rooting for these folks. Nothing like Sweetie is not like a bad person. I really don't really think a lot of people are bad people, but I am rooting for her to like actually heal. I would love to see what that looked like. I used to think Portia was doing that. Okay, let me know what you think. Okay, please support this video, share it with someone who likes marital medicine or wants to learn something about toxic relationships and how women are active participants in them.